Hello and welcome to the Android OS guide. This is chapter 9 where we're going to be talking about migrating from iOS to Android. So if you were coming from iOS, which is one of the more popular mobile operating systems out there, onto Android, there's a couple things you need to learn about moving over onto Android. And there's a lot of things that you may need to know about backing up and how you can go about the whole transitional process from an iPhone to a new Android device. Probably the first and most important question is, what do you need to back up? There's a lot of different things that you can back up, a lot of different things you're probably going to want to bring onto your new Android device. But the key things will probably be that of contacts, so your phone numbers and friends and family, photos and videos, and of course there's a little bit of a talk about applications, which we're going to get into, which is a little bit of a varying subject because it comes with two different environments, iOS and Android. And lastly, miscellaneous data. So for example, SMS messages, notes, things of that nature, if you really want to back that up, and where do you put that and how to get those off on the iOS side, and then coming back onto the Android side and how you can put it onto your device. So first off, contacts. Let's talk all about contacts here. Google Sync is really a big thing when it comes to transferring contacts. So on your iOS device, there's a couple ways to export contacts here. You can use iTunes to sync contacts with Google Contacts actually. So Google account, if you have a Google account in Gmail, this is gonna make everything easier. You can sync all your iPhone contacts with that so it stays in line. You can even use iCloud to export contacts. So if you have iCloud sync turned on, basically iCloud is a backup mechanism on iOS. You can go into iCloud and export all your contacts so you can easily put them on Android. Or again, like I said, you can sync your contacts with Google Contacts via iTunes. If you do this automatically when you get your new Android device and you input your Google Sync, so you go into your settings, Google Sync, and you go ahead and do all of those, filling in your login and your password, it'll automatically take all your contacts and import them onto your phone. You can actually check out our previous chapter where we talked a little bit about data transfer for more insight into that. But again, Google Sync will probably be the most easiest and most convenient way to do this. iCloud also offers, again, the export vCard solution. So you can go to iCloud.com, use your Apple ID, sign in, and export your contacts that way. And last but not least, manually, of course, that's a little bit tedious, but of course you can just copy manually your contacts over. And on the Android end of things, once you're on Android, you'd simply restore from your Google account. You can go in, set up your new device here, like I said, and go ahead, and if you're going into your backup and reset, you have the option to automatically restore here. And like I said, when reinstalling an app, it can restore backed up settings and data. The same with your account. So if you have a backup account, you can simply get all your data from the Google servers. So again, your Google account is really, really going to benefit you here when you're setting up a new Android device. However, there is much more simpler solutions. There's an app known as My Contacts Backup, which you can find both in the iTunes store. So you can find it on the iOS side and the Android Play Store. The way this works, basically, you install this on your iOS device, back up your contacts, sync it with that one account, go over to Android, install the same app, have all your contacts be imported. There's tons of different apps that do this, both free and paid, but My Contacts Backup is one of the more popular ones out there since it is free. So definitely worth checking out. This allows you to restore your contacts via an app-based method. Next, let's talk about photos and videos. You probably have tons of photos on your iPhone, especially if it was your primary camera or device. So on iOS, there's a really easy way to import pictures and videos onto your Mac or PC. It's as simple as plugging the device in. You don't even need to do this through iTunes. You can just simply right-click the device. So when it shows up, it's going to show up on your My Computer like a hard drive. And you can right-click that and say import pictures and videos. All the same, you can simply just open the device on the Mac end. When you automatically put in a device, there's an app that's called Image Capture Tool that allows you to automatically sync any pictures off of your iPhone or iPad, for that matter, onto your desktop. So you can put all of these locally on your hard drive, your Mac or PC hard drive on your desktop, wherever you want to store them. Once you have all the pictures exported off your iOS device, you can use something like AirDroid, which again we talked about in the previous chapter, so definitely worth checking out at web.airdroid.com, or just airdroid.com for that matter, and go over there and you can then sync up your Android device with AirDroid and then take any files, so photos and videos from your desktop, and simply transfer them onto your Android device using AirDroid or any other method. AirDroid just happens to be really convenient because it's wireless, simple to use. Features a really clean user interface. So again, to recap, export all photos and videos from your iOS device. You can simply do this by plugging your device in and dragging the photos out, putting them in a set location. Then AirDroid, pair it up with your Android device and sync all data that way. Very, very easy, drag and drop, and a clean interface to do so. I wanted to also take a moment here to kind of showcase how easy it is to take your actual files and demo just how to transfer something, for example, from step one from your iOS device to your Mac or PC, your desktop, and then taking that and then whatever method you want to use to transition that to your Android device. Seeing as photos and videos is something that a lot of people tend to want to be able to transfer between devices, whatever platforms they're switching on. Here, I'm going to showcase it on the Mac, for example. Here is when I plug in my iPhone. Let's say I'm transitioning from iOS to an Android device. I have my iPhone here, and then I have this picture of a dog, my dog here that I want. So let's say I take this picture and I drag it to a folder here. This is just an untitled folder. It could be your desktop. It could be wherever you want to put it on your Mac. So here now it's on my Mac. If you're on Windows, you would open up My Computer when you plug your iPhone in, navigate through your photos and find the photos you want. Drag them all onto your desktop on Windows like I'm doing here. And once you have them all transitioned, step 2 onto your desktop, here's where you get to choose whatever method you want to transfer it to your Android device. You can use Android file transfer on the Mac. You can just do it vice versa on the PC. You can just kind of drag it on the Windows Explorer too, drag it over. I'm going to do it via Dropbox, a wireless cloud sync solution here. So the way I would do this now, I'm going to go ahead and minimize image capture. I'm going to go ahead and move this to Dropbox right here. So I have a service called Dropbox which syncs my photos. It's now moved to Dropbox. So you can see it's now in my Dropbox folder here. Now that it's in my Dropbox folder, I'm going to go ahead and exit out and bring my Dropbox folder over, or my Dropbox app over here on my Samsung Galaxy S4. It is synced with set account. And then now that that photo is synced over, I could easily find it. So I can go through here and then find it. And then I'm going to go ahead and I even have Dropbox on the web here. So again, I could sync it either way. I could drag the photo over into this web browser and sync it. Or in this case, I just hit right click, move to Dropbox. That works as well. And then now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through my recent images and find the picture that I just transferred. And here we have it. We see the image I just modified. I can click on this little arrow right here, and I can say right here, I can choose to move it around or export it. So I'm going to click export, and I can save it to this device on Android. So export this file, and I can choose where I want to save it. In this case, I'm saving it to my internal storage. I'm going to save it to my downloads folder, export it, and just like that, it's going to start exporting from Dropbox over to my Android device. Very simply, no wires needed, all wireless, taking advantage of the cloud service. And now if I go into my downloads, or actually the folder I would have to navigate to, so I'd have to go through my settings and navigate the storage. I now have that photo saved. I can use it as a wallpaper. I can do whatever I want with it very, very simply, all via Dropbox. So again, this is via Dropbox. You can do it via AirDroid, which is also simple and works cross-platform. Whatever method is up to you. That's what's so great about Android. You have the options. Now, when it comes to apps, there's a couple things to note here. It's not really worth backing up your iOS apps in the sense that if you're coming from iOS to Android, there's going to be a difference in market here. While there's a lot of major apps that are both on both platforms, so for example, apps like Instagram are on both platforms, there's a lot of apps that aren't. So some games that you may have may not be compatible with that of Android. And even if you had high scores on your iOS device, some of that may not be transferable. Reason being is iOS uses a system called Game Center, which is unique to iOS. That stores all your high scores, etc. That's not available on the Google Play Store, however. So if you're looking to get apps that you had on your iOS device, you can simply go into the Google Play Store and start installing apps, see what apps are cross-platform, see what games that you may have been playing on iOS that are available on Android, and install them that way. That way works perfectly fine. However, once you're on Android, it's really good to make note of installing an app like Helium. You can go to the Google Play Store and find Helium, an app sync and backup app. Very, very, very popular free application that you can install once you have your new Android device set up. So let's say you migrated all your data over, you installed all the apps that you want on your Android device, install Helium. Helium allows you to save app data. So this allows you to save your backups, your high scores, all that stuff on Android. So kind of what Game Center did for you on iOS, Helium will do for you on Android. It'll save all that app data. That way, anytime you need to restore your phone or move to another Android device, you have all of your data, your app data saved, because sometimes by default, the Google Sync won't save your high scores. It'll save your apps, but it won't save your high scores or your personal settings. So again, when migrating from iOS to Android, as far as the app market goes, it's a hit or miss. A lot of the major apps will be there. Some of the smaller apps may not, and vice versa. You'll see a lot of apps on Android that aren't on iOS. So you just kind of have to look around and do your research on alternatives to certain apps that you may have been using on iOS and find the alternatives on Android. Now, getting down to miscellaneous, as far as exporting any data from your iOS that you really want. So if it's, SMS text messages or notes or voice memos, iExplorer is a really, really popular app that gives you access to everything on your iDevice. It's worth downloading, and there's a pro version to buy to get full access. This allows you all access to your iOS device, something that Android kind of just does by default. On iOS, you don't have root access to your text messages, and iTunes won't allow you to export your text messages in any way really that's convenient or easy. So iExplorer allows you to do this. Download iExplorer. This allows you full access to your device. Drag and drop whatever you want, whether it's on your Mac or PC. Take off whatever you want, whether it's your text messages, voice memos, again, whatever you want from your iOS device, iPod Touch, iPhone, iPad. Drag it onto your desktop, save it. So again, you're going to export your data to your computer, and then you would go about importing onto Android device. So the way you would do this is you can simply just plug in your Android device and drag over whatever you want. But again, keeping in mind that all of this stuff won't sync over. So for example, your iMessage conversations won't be able to pop up on your Android device. There's again, it's a difference of environment, difference of applications. Though if you just want to back it up, you can use iExplorer to back up those conversations and save it to your computer locally. The things you do want to import on your Android device, pictures, music, ringtones, can easily be imported from there. So again, iExplorer, definitely an app worth picking up. I want to recap in the end here, talking about some tips when it comes from migrating from iOS to Android and some things to note. Google is your friend, and that's the very, very key thing here when coming from iOS to Android. In using and syncing up with a lot of Google services, it's going to make your transition easier. So if you use a Google Calendar, if you have your Google contacts synced with that, and of course use something like Gmail, which is the kind of the center of your Google account, this makes your transition very easy, because if you use Google Calendar, if you use Google Contacts, when you come over to Android, you don't have to worry about those things. You just plug in your Google account, your Gmail, log in, it'll sync your calendar, it'll sync your contacts, and of course you can get third-party apps for different calendars. If you don't want to use the Gcal app, you can get all sorts of apps that will sync with that. Email as well will sync very, very easily. Of course, there's lots of cloud services that you can check out that will make your transition period very easy as well. If you're using services like Dropbox, for example, so let's say on iOS you're using Dropbox, you store and sync your data back into Dropbox. You can set up for example, a photo backup feature on iOS. Anytime you take a picture, it syncs it with Dropbox. And what that will allow you to do is once you're on Android, you simply install Dropbox, which is cross-platform, and get access to all of the photos that you took on your iOS device. So cloud services help a lot too. Keeping in mind those are both free and paid depending on storage needs. As far as music goes, whereas iTunes was your kind of media manager for iOS and transitioning to that of Android, Google Music is a service and application that you can get in the Play Store that is definitely worth checking out. Usually just comes by default. Google Music is kind of your alternative to that. When you sync music over, you can play it via the Google app. You can also browse music in the Google Music Play Store and all of that good stuff. So you can buy music and download music that way. But keeping in mind, this is just your manager. So this is your all-in-one music manager on Android when you're coming over from iOS to Android. Also, it's a big learning curve. There's a lot of different stuff when you're coming from iOS to Android. Keeping in mind, there's going to be new apps, new environment for you to use. So whereas stuff that you may have been familiar with on iOS, you're going to have to learn how to do that on Android. Not all apps will be available. Again, a majority of them will be the major ones, the big name companies and apps. But keeping in mind, things are done a little bit differently on Android than they are on iOS. So again, to kind of recap everything, back up your data. Back up all your data on your iOS that you're going to want to bring over to your new Android device, whether it's a Galaxy S5, an LG phone, a Motorola, whatever phone you're going with on Android, whatever version, back up all the data you want. Make it as simpler. Setting up a Google account, a Gmail account, and syncing your data with that will make your transition period much, much more simpler and convenient. in that once you set up your new phone, you simply sync it up and you'll have all your data there. You're going to have to reinstall things like your applications. You can easily move music, videos, and photos in a plethora and a variety of ways, as we talked about in previous chapters. But again, overall, the transition period isn't too bad. It's not too hard at all. It's nothing tedious. It just requires you, picking the method that works best for you and that works simplest for you. And then keeping in mind that there is a little bit of a learning curve when you're actually on Android and how you go about using new apps and getting used to the new feel of the operating system. So I hope this helps you in transitioning from iOS to Android, as far as whether it's an iPhone, an iPad, an iPod Touch, whatever it may be, in your transition to a new Android device. We hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to check out previous chapters for lots more detail and stuff that we covered here, as well as the next video. So thanks a lot for watching, and we'll catch you all in the next chapter.